Hi, so I thought I'd do a quick video. I've done a couple of review videos on the Calibre Bossnut, and I'm about just over 2 years into owning the bike now and riding it, and I thought I'd do a quick update on how I'm getting on with it, and just some thoughts on kind of ownership of this bike. Okay, so up to recently I was very happy with the bike. It rides really well. You know, it's a budget bike, really good value, and I'm super happy with how it performed. Things kind of, for me, kind of like started to go wrong with it. You know, components start to wear out, which you'd expect, particularly because the components on it aren't particularly high spec. So you'd expect to get some failure, but kind of where my kind of thoughts on the bike started to change is when I started to interact with the shop who provides the bike, called Go Outdoors in the UK. Firstly, I thought I had a failure in the suspension linkage down here, and when I approached Go Outdoors to get the bolt that goes through the suspension there, they really weren't very helpful at all. They just recommended you take it to a local bike shop and see if you could, if they could supply the part. But like, that's not really going to happen with this brand. That's actually just, the only place you can buy this brand is through Go Outdoors. So that wasn't really, it wasn't very helpful out of them. But where things kind of really soured for me was when I started to notice some cracks on the frame. Let me just switch the camera around here now and I'll show you. Okay, so I started to notice some kind of like hairline cracks around the frame. You can just see it here, and this went all the way around to the other side. I'll show you. I sanded it down to check if there was actually, if the metal was cracked or if it was just the primer or whatever that they put under the paint there. So, and as well, and the bike started to crack underneath the headset here, and then so it's all the way around here, all the way underneath here, and then also you can see on the frame here as well where the brace that supports the seat stay. You can see there's a little crack there as well. Again, now, like, this could be just the primer or whatever cracking, but there's a huge amount of flex in the frame, and you can see, like, you can see the kind of early signs of failure already on the bike. So when I approached them and said, look, it looks as if the frame is cracking, they recommended I take it to a local bike store and get the bike examined, and I did that. And basically the mechanic in a local reputable bike store here where I live, he said, look, it looks, the frame looks as if it's compromised, and I definitely wouldn't be happy riding that. So long story short, went back to Go Outdoors and told him that the mechanic said that, it's hard to tell. Like, the challenge there, right, is like it could be just a paint crack, or it could actually be the underlying, the aluminium actually failing. But what the mechanic was saying is, regardless, like, you shouldn't be seeing that kind of surface level cracking if the frame isn't compromised. So I went back to Go Outdoors, and they were basically saying, oh, it must have taken a very heavy impact on the front end of the bike. And I was like, well, it hasn't. I've only ridden the bike maybe 25 or 30 times, and like, the trails that we ride on are basically just trails. Like, there's no jumps, there's, it's very kind of tame riding, really. So I went back and I said, look, guys, that's just like not what happened to the bike. And then I said, okay, like, if it was a front end heavy impact, how come I'm also seeing cracking around the seat stay? And basically they were just kind of like trying to fob me off. So I kept at it, and eventually they agreed to collect the bike, because I had this bike shipped to Ireland. So they agreed to collect the bike, and then I was waiting for the bike to be collected, and of course, no sign of the bike actually being collected. So I got back onto Go Outdoors again, and I said, look, what's going on here? Like, the bike was supposed to be collected. The next customer service agent just replied saying, oh, that bike is out of warranty. Sorry, we can't do any more for you. And I was like, but I'm waiting for the bike to be collected, and this went on and on and on. And then at the end of it, I just decided just to leave it off. So like long story short, I probably would have upgraded this bike and bought the Calibre Sentry that they just launched. Like the geometry and everything on the bike looks really good. But you know what? Like for me, you know, like the Calibre kind of story kind of sounds a bit bullshitty, you know. Like you know, they talk a lot about, you know, providing really good value bikes with, you know, really good modern geometry, but that doesn't kind of really mean anything if they don't stand over their product. And like, you know, I produce like little videos like showing the unboxing of this bike, a review after kind of like 6 weeks of ownership. It's kind of like I was a fan of what they were doing there, but like I really kind of, you know, companies that don't stand over their product, you know, like that's for me there, like that's just a complete deal breaker. So this bike for me now is at the moment is a write-off. Like the frame is, you know, is damaged. It's too dangerous to ride it. If you've got a headset failure there, you could end up breaking your neck or something like that. So the bike is you know, no longer viable. So I'm going to replace the bike. But as much as I would have loved to buy the Calibre Sentry, if I didn't have this experience with Go Outdoors and with Calibre, like every time as well that I contacted Go Outdoors, they say, oh, we'll get on to Calibre and ask for their opinion on it. And every time they came back, it was just some wishy-washy kind of excuse that meant that they didn't want to stand over the frame. If you look as well, right, the areas where this frame is kind of showing signs of fatigue or damage, are the areas where on the kind of updated version of the Bossnut bike, you can see that there's heavier wells all around those joints, and obviously like they've seen failures in those, so that's, you know, that's the reason that they increase the welding around there, you know. So for me, like the Calibre Bossnut is a really important bike because like it allows you to get into, you know, like a decent quality mountain bike without breaking the bank in terms of like the amount of money you have to spend to get into it. And it's the same, like now they've brought out the Sentry with you know, like the spec and geometry that would allow you to kind of like ride enduro races. But like, you know, they're important bikes, but if they're not willing to stand over their product, I think it's a really poor reflection on the company. So they've turned me anyway from like a fan of their product and a supporter of the company, and just my interactions with them over the last kind of like, you know, a month and a half trying to sort this out with them, it's kind of really soured me against them. So for me, I'm done with Calibre. I won't be buying the Sentry. I'm going to buy either a YT or a Canyon, because I just, you know, the bikes are excellent bikes. They're a little bit more expensive than the Bossnut or than the Calibre brand bikes tend to be. But you know what, when you pay a little bit extra, sometimes you just the margins in what they offer allow them to actually support their product. So that's where my money will be going the next time. Okay, so that's my thoughts, final thoughts kind of on my ownership of the Calibre Bossnut. And it started out really well. I was really enjoying it. The more I interacted with the company, the less impressed I became. Thanks.